The film begins with this guy named Garan, who is a secret hitman. One day, he was at a bar, all set to get rid of someone. He was kind of dressed up funny, wearing a fake mustache to hide who he really was. Soon after, he saw the person he was supposed to take out heading to the restroom. Without wasting any time, Garan followed him and got the job done. Once he finished, Garan quickly called up his boss, Mr. X, to tell him that everything went smoothly. At that time, Mr. X seemed pleased and told Garan about another person he needed to take care of, asking him to do it the day after tomorrow. The following day, we see Garan at home with his family, and they all seem really happy together. Garan adores his wife and daughter a lot, but the thing is, they don't know about his dark secret job. Later on, his wife reminded him of a dinner promise he made. Garan assured her that they'd go out for dinner that night once he was done with his work. At that time, their daughter planned to spend the night at her grandma's place instead of joining them. Soon after, Garan left home, heading to a hidden spot to grab the weapons he'd need for his next mission. As evening came around, Garan was back in his disguise, wearing that fake mustache again. Meanwhile, his wife was at home, excitedly waiting to hear from him about their dinner plans. So, here's what happened. Garan was at a restaurant keeping an eye on his next target. Soon after, he saw the guy and a few others walk into a back room. Then, Garan didn't waste any time. He followed them in and took them out one by one.
What is going on?
But when he was about to leave, he got a huge shock that his wife was there and she had been shot. Turns out she got a fake message that seemed to be from Garan, telling her to come to the restaurant right away. Fast forward a year, and Garan had hung up his hitman boots. He wasn't doing that job anymore, but he was still hell-bent on finding the person who had killed his wife. Out of the blue, he got a message from a guy named Roman offering him a job with a massive payday of 10 million bucks. The job was to take out some big shot called the King of Killers. But Garan, who was out of the game now, didn't even think twice before saying no to the offer. A little later, Garan was chatting with his mom, who was really worried about him. She noticed that he had been pretty down since his wife passed away, and it was even affecting his daughter, who seemed sad and was spending a lot of time at her grandma's. Then she urged him to try and find joy in life again, for his own sake and his daughter's. In the end, we see Garan and his mom throwing a lovely birthday party for his little girl, trying to bring some happiness back into their lives. At that point, Garen's little girl made a heartfelt wish. She just wanted to see her dad happy again, like how he used to be. Garen couldn't hold back his emotions hearing this. He hugged her tight and said sorry for not being there for her enough since her mom passed away. Later that night, Garen was at home, just browsing on his computer when he got a surprise visit from Roman, the guy who had offered him that big money job. At that time, Roman was curious about why Garen had turned down such a lucrative offer. Then, Garen simply told him that he had quit that line of work after losing his wife a year ago. Roman seemed to understand and handed over a business card, telling Garen he'd be in Tokyo if he changed his mind within the next couple of days. Suddenly, Garen's phone rang. It was his mom with alarming news that his daughter was in the hospital. Without a second thought, he raced to the hospital to check on her. Once he got there, the doctor gave him the heartbreaking news that his daughter had a serious heart condition and needed surgery right away. But the surgery was super expensive, and Garen didn't have enough money to cover it. Feeling trapped and desperate, he called up Roman and agreed to take the job, with plans to head to Tokyo in a couple of days to get everything set up. The next day, Garen caught up with Mr. X, who was not just his colleague, but also his best friend. Garen told him about the new mission he got from Roman, and it was the one involving getting rid of the infamous King of Killers. Mr. X was really worried upon hearing this, warning Garen to back out because he knew how dangerous the King of Killers was. But Garen felt stuck cause he needed that money for his daughter's surgery. Mr. X even offered to give him all his savings, but Garen couldn't accept it, knowing Mr. X had his own family to look after. Fast forward a bit, and Garen was in Tokyo to see Roman. Once there, Roman took him to a secretive spot where he found himself in a room with some of the world's top hitmen, all gathered together. Then things got really interesting. Roman's boss, a guy named Dracos, greeted them through a screen. He told them they were all there to try and take out the King of Killers, but here's the twist: the King of Killers was actually him, Dracos. Yeah, he wanted to put his skills to the test by going up against the best of the best, and only one person could win, grabbing a hopping prize of $10 million. So now, Giran and the other assassins were in a crazy competition to see who could beat Dracos, the legendary King of Killers, and claim the prize money. Upon hearing the details of this wild contest, one guy, who used to be a sniper, couldn't believe it and decided to bail. But just as he was leaving, he got shot by someone else. Giran and everyone else quickly figured out that they were trapped. Turns out the place was fully locked down and under heavy surveillance, making sure none of them could escape without facing Dracos. Now only 6 people remained, ready to take on this bizarre challenge. They were given the chance to pick out any weapon they desired to use in the battle. Then Dracos told them to grab a coin from a bunch that Roman had brought in. Whoever got the smallest coin would be the first to go head-to-head with Dracos. Guess what? It was Giran who ended up with the smallest coin, which meant he was up first. But then Ivankov, a guy who used to work in Russian intelligence, proposed a swap. He offered to trade his coin with Giran's, pledging to share the prize money with the others if he managed to defeat Dracos. With that, Ivankov hopped onto the elevator, zooming up to the top floor to begin his search for Dracos. Meanwhile, the remaining players were watching Ivankov and Dracos duking it out on a screen. Soon after, things escalated quickly with punches flying and bullets firing between the two. But Dracos had the upper hand because he had set up loads of traps everywhere, making it super hard for Ivankov. Sadly, Ivankov didn't stand a chance and Dracos beat him easily. After witnessing this, Giran spoke up, telling everyone that this whole setup was just not fair cause Dracos had turned the top floor into a trap-infested battlefield. Then he suggested that they should all team up to convince Dracos to face them all at the same time. But a guy named Andra didn't agree with Giran's plan. So, Giran challenged him to be the next one to go up against Dracos. But Andra backed out, saying that the coin he picked was only the 5th one, so it wasn't his turn yet. In a bit, Dracos popped up on the screen again, and Giran didn't hold back, accusing him of fighting dirty with all those traps upstairs. He kept insisting that if Dracos truly wanted to prove he was the best, he should take them all on at once, instead of hiding behind his rigged game. It seemed like Giran was really determined to get this point across, hoping to convince Dracos to fight fair and square. Hearing what Giran had to say, Dracos seemed to be swayed a bit. Finally, he said okay to the idea, but he'd only take on 4 out of the 5 people left. So, one person had to go first. This new rule got Andra all riled up, and he lunged at Giran. But before things could get ugly, the others jumped in to break it up. Then, a guy named Ajes stood up, saying he'd face Dracos first. If he lost, then the others could team up against Dracos. Soon after, Ajes went upstairs, where Dracos was already waiting for him. What followed was a super intense and rough battle between the two of them. Sadly, Ajes couldn't beat Dracos. After beating Ajes, Dracos called out to the rest, daring them to come at him all together. Then, they grouped up, with Giran reminding everyone to stick close. But their plan was thrown into chaos as soon as they stepped out of the elevator. A sudden blast sent them flying in different directions, forcing each to fend for themselves. Not much later, Clara, the only woman in the group and a former British Special Forces member, bumped into Dracos first. They engaged in a fierce battle, with Clara putting up a solid fight. Surprisingly, she managed to take Dracos down with relative ease, showing him she wasn't someone to be underestimated. Meanwhile, Giran stumbled into a room only to be greeted by Dracos' goons who were waiting there. He had no choice but to fight them off.
Here we go.
Luckily, he won and hurried off to find the other contestants. Along the way, he made a grim discovery that Clara, who had earlier been killed by Dracos. Now only 3 of them were left in this deadly game. At the same time, Dracos ran into another contestant, Ren. Before throwing punches, Ren confessed that he wasn't here for the money, but for vengeance. He revealed that Dracos was the one who had killed his father. This revelation kicked off a violent and intense fight between them. At that time, Ren put up a strong fight, showing off his skills as a Japanese swordsman. Despite his efforts, Dracos eventually overpowered him. In the meantime, Garen, who was still trying to find the others, got a nasty surprise. Ander attacked him out of nowhere, wanting to keep the prize all to himself without sharing with him. There, Ander managed to pin Garen down, but thinking of his daughter in the hospital gave Garen a surge of energy and determination. Fueled by the thought of her, he fought back fiercely, ultimately killing Ander. It was a reminder of what he was fighting for, is a chance to save his daughter. Next, Garen found himself in a room face-to-face with Dracos. At that time, Dracos mentioned he had pegged Garen as the last man standing from the get-go. He knew Garen's backstory too, which was a former US intelligence officer turned hitman, but with a moral compass, only taking on assignments to eliminate bad guys. Dracos was curious why Garen didn't just accept the $10 million offer at the beginning. Then, Garen shared about his sick daughter and how desperately he needed the money for her treatment. Wanting to settle things in an honorable manner, Garen suggested they duke it out with their fists instead of weapons to prove who was truly the stronger man. But Dracos wasn't up for a fair fight. He pulled out a gun and started shooting at Garen. In the chaos, Garen managed to find one of Dracos' discarded weapons and fought back. Suddenly, the room went dark, giving Dracos the chance to slip away. When the lights flickered back on, the brutal fight resumed, both giving as good as they got. Just when Garen was on the brink of overpowering Dracos, Roman intervened, halting the fight. Even Dracos had to admit that Garen was the stronger opponent. As a token of recognition, he instructed Garen to take a box he had prepared earlier. He revealed that the box contained a bank access key, and it was Garen's ticket to the $10 million prize he so desperately needed for his daughter. Then Dracos opened up, admitting that his true motive wasn't to prove he was the toughest around, but to find a strong ally. He revealed that there was this gang of global assassins, aiming to bring down governments worldwide. Dracos believed he needed someone as strong as Garen by his side to halt their plans. But Garen wasn't buying what Dracos was selling. His main concern was his daughter's well-being, and he had no intention of teaming up with Dracos. Declining the offer, Garen walked away, taking with him the prize money he had won. 6 months after that crazy adventure, Garen was spotted having a meal with his daughter. They both were all smiles because his daughter had undergone surgery and was fully healed from her sickness. In the middle of their lively conversation, Garen suddenly got a video message from Dracos. As he played the video, he saw, to his shock, the moment when his wife was murdered, and the killer was none other than Mr. X. Realizing what was about to unfold, Garen asked his daughter to move to a seat nearby, sensing that Dracos would show up any moment. Sure enough, Dracos stepped in front of Garen not too long after. He revealed that Mr. X was the mastermind with a grand plan to topple governments globally, having orchestrated the killing of Garen's wife to manipulate him into joining forces with Mr. X. With this revelation, Dracos asked if Garen was prepared to dismantle this malicious group. Without a second thought, he accepted Dracos' proposal to get vengeance. And with that, the film ends. The moral lesson from this film is never trust a guy who invites you to a deadly assassin competition. Better stick to family dinners and birthday parties instead.